Hi, my name is Keith Halls, and I'd like to welcome you back to this edition of the weekly 10-minute CFO call. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most important and sometimes one of the most dreaded tasks in all of accounting and finance, and that's the budgeting process. I can remember being a CFO of a large publicly traded company, and that budgeting process took lots and lots of times, but it was incredibly important. It kept us on track. It set the blueprint for the next year/years ahead of what we would be doing. I have back with us today one of our frequent show guests, Mr. Jared Miller. Jared, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Keith, how are you doing today?
Doing well. We had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. I hope everyone out there did also. Well, you have a lot of experience and you have a great experience also in this field of budgeting and everything. Tell me, why do you think it's important for companies to establish the budget?
Well, the budget is important because, and the way I kind of look at it is, it's the goal for the company. It's
Mhm.
difficult to kind of push. A lot of people have lots of goals. Everything boils down to money. I think we've talked about that before about making sure that you bring in your accounting and finance departments and decisions. This is one of the most important, if not the most important thing a company can do when they bring in the finance and accounting department is making that budget. It's a goal. It's a way to see where the company is, where the company's going, where it's been in the past. I mean, all of those things are kind of brought in when the budget is made. So it's
Right.
definitely very important. It's setting that annual New Year's resolution for the company per se.
Very good. Now, how many companies do you think really sit down and prepare a budget? I mean, I've been with larger companies that do and larger companies that don't, but do you think many companies really go through that process?
In my career, the experience has been that most companies have that where I've been because a lot of things are dictated on that budget. When public companies, obviously, you're giving earning financials. I've worked for a lot of private companies too. Bonuses, the health of the company is tied to that, so it's been pretty important. In my career as being a fractional CFO, I've seen less and less of it, to be frank. And it's not always the best thing, in my opinion. I think it's a good, even if it's a quick budget. I mean, something to measure yourself up. So it's something that I see less of on the smaller to medium sized companies, just because the expertise isn't there, or they feel they don't have the time to sit down and do it. But I think it's necessary to definitely do it, even if it's on a piece of paper and say, "Hey, this is the things we want to hit." As long as you're being realistic with those numbers and goals, I think it's important to do for everyone.
Here's a question too, because I wondered, because I don't even know the right answer on that. Do you go back and you check the results? Do you do this on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis usually?
It depends on the client. Sometimes, so a lot of times where I've seen it and my experiences, you make those annual budgets, and then you obviously have what makes up the annual is the days, the weeks, the months, the quarters, so on and so forth. So I think it's important. In previous companies, I've done it both ways, where we meet on a monthly basis and review actuals to budget, and I think that's important. With the knowledge of that, months can fluctuate greatly. It's just kind of see where we are in a trend. And so, me personally, I've made a budget for a client recently, and we have monthly actuals that we meetings that we have to look for monthly budgets to actual, but then we also look at it as a quarter and then a trending year, and then we'll also kind of compare it to year to date of the previous year at that time,
Mhm.
so we can kind of see we're comparing it to budget, we're comparing it to previous years. It's kind of an intensive thing, or it can be, but I think it's good to look at it in multiple ways because if you only look at it at one point, um, it can be skewed greatly. So,
It's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. That is a very
yeah.
good point on that. Let me ask you another question now, because I've seen companies do both ways. Some companies will pull in a lot of departments to assist. You know, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's finance, maybe it's sales, whatever it may be. Some companies will pull in a lot of the different departments to participate to help with establishing those budgets. Others take more of a top-down approach where the board or the C-suite will establish the budget and it's kind of just left up to the individual departments to run with that budget. What have you seen, or in your opinion, what works best?
I've seen both ways. I've seen the top down push down from owners, from the board, and saying, "Hey, we need to hit X, Y, Z because that's our expectations for the year because the investors or the stock owners demand it." And it can be good. Sometimes the way I kind of see it is though it's like you're pulling the cart instead of it's like pulling and pushing. And I think in a lot of ways that's kind of a pulling to success. Where if you kind of do a bottoms up, you're doing a pushing to success because those are the people that are in the grind in the trenches every day that are making the company successful. I personally like a well balanced, and it's tricky. It's hard. It depends on the personnel and the departments. Obviously, everyone has their desires of where that budget wants to be. Sales wants their goal to be really low because they want to be able to make it. They want to make, owners want it really high because they want to succeed. They want the income. They want the cash flow. Workers, depending on who you ask, they're like, well, I just kind of want to show up, clock in, clock out. I don't really want to push myself. So why don't we just kind of take it easy and not really grow, but a little bit. And so I think it's difficult, and I think it's going to be honestly unique for each individual, the size of the company. Sometimes one person is wearing multiple hats. If you're in a smaller company, you usually don't have those divisions. So it's actually easier to bring in those departments because you only have 2 or 3 people that are actually running all of those departments. The one thing I would caution on is the more people you bring in, the difficult it is in some sense. So you have to find the balance for your company. And you also need someone that's ultimately responsible for that budget. Because if you don't have someone ultimately responsible to be able to make those final kind of those executive decisions, so you've got to have an executive that's in charge of it, then the meetings can go array and leave very unproductive meetings. You leave the meetings having not accomplished anything and oftentimes more confused and farther behind than when you started the meeting. So I hate to give that answer that it depends, but it really does depend.
It does, and I completely agree. That's why I asked that question, because it's a hard question to completely answer, and I think it's a facts and circumstances type thing. You have to look at the company and then decide for yourself. This is a question, and this is a topic that's going to take a few episodes to go over. But as we close this one, is there a client experience that you'd like to share that you've had with budgeting with everyone?
Yeah. So I have a client that they are trying to reach certain levels of profitability and cash flow, and it's good. They haven't had a budget before. They've been operating for many years, in fact, and they've always the owner is a very good owner. He's very very savvy in his knowledge and understanding of the business. But it's nice to actually put it down on paper and kind of prove himself out in some ways. And it's been nice to see, like, yeah, see, I know what I'm talking about. Not on my part, but the business and show the health of the business, and then be able to go to the board and the investors and say, yes, we're on track. We're doing what we said we were going to do 3 months ago, 4 months ago, whenever it was. I guess we're in May. It's probably like 6 months ago now. But it's nice to be able to show back, and so it's a nice way to remind yourself also. Take a look back and say, hey, we're doing what we wanted to do, and that's that sense. But even if for once, it's nice to be able to have that information to make those fine adjustments that need to happen throughout the year. So, but yeah.
Well, Jared, as always, thank you very much. You're a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, so I appreciate you every time that you come on. We'll continue this in one of the future episodes because it's one of the most important tasks that a CFO or accounting team and everything like that will be involved in a given year. So we'll go over this in more detail in one of the later episodes, but I want to thank you for your time today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Keith.
And thanks to everyone who's joined us today. Hopefully this call has helped you understand better the intricate and fun world of finance and accounting. And with that, I will say goodbye for today, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you.